Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to ISAP thematic track 1, Can Socio-Ecological Production Landscapes and Seascapes Promote Sustainable Food Systems? Thinking Science and Practice. My name is Koji Miwa, policy researcher from Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, IGES. I will moderate this session. First of all, we'd like to start with the opening remark by a prominent speaker, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, president of IGES. He recorded his remark for us, so please.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Kazuhiko Takeuchi, president of IGES. I have worked on the conservation and restoration of Satoyama or SEPLS for more than 20 years. I also played a key role in the establishment of the international partnerships for the Satoyama Initiative, IPSI. Nature is essential to all living things, including humans, and food that we eat is part of nature and significantly impacted by the environment. Therefore, how we produce, treat, and consume it matters to us quite significantly. We have already been facing multiple environmental challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution. Unsustainable food system can cause a vicious cycle in combination with these environmental challenges, what we call Satoyama in Japanese, otherwise known as socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, or SEPLS in short, are places where people live in harmony with nature, while addressing various dimensions such as equity, livelihoods, and land stewardships. SEPLS also incorporates traditional knowledge for sustainable management practices in primary production processes such as agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Considering the importance of SEPLS and their further development, I'm therefore glad to have experts and practitioners from around the world to discuss the potential of SEPLS approach to contribute to achieving a sustainable food system. I hope for fruitful discussion among them to provide key takeaways for the audience. With that, I conclude my opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Takeuchi. So before inviting today's speakers from around the world, I'd like to introduce you to the framework and main points of this session. First, introduction to Satoyama Initiative. We have been facing the triple planetary crises, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Sorry, for some reason, I'm trying to make it presentation mode, but sorry, so somehow it's not making change, but I'll do with this for now, but I hope it's visible enough for you. So yes, as I mentioned, we have been facing this triple environmental crisis. And today we mainly target the biodiversity loss issues. However, we are not excluding other two. And regarding the global assessment by the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, about 1 million species are now threatened with extinction. And if we don't transform the way we live or govern, those may go extinct in the next few years. As we face such issues, Ministry of Environment of Japan and United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, or UNU-IAS, proposed the Satoyama Initiative at Convention of Biological Diversity, CBD, at COP10. It envisions society in harmony with nature with Satoyama approach and perspectives. The approach is to consolidate wisdom on securing diverse ecosystem services and values, integrate traditional ecological knowledge and modern science, and explore new forms of co-management systems. Therefore, it intended to propose a global effort through the Satoyama approach. To facilitate such an effort, International Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, or IPSI, was also established. Currently, there are 328 organizations from around the world in the network. The members can be governmental agencies, private companies, academic institutes, or NGOs. Therefore, if you are interested in joining IPSI, please contact IPSI Secretariat. We just dropped the link in chat. As part of IPSI activities, there's a seed funding mechanism called Satoyama Development Mechanism, or SDM. IGES is playing a main role of the SDM Secretariat and have funded 64 projects in 28 countries until now to support IPSI members to implement SEPLS approach activities. Now we would like to move on to a framing of today's session. Satoyama or Satoumi are places that were traditionally formed through the practice of sustainable agriculture, forestry, and fisheries in Japan. As people were living in harmony with nature, their activities were part of ecosystems, providing ecosystem services. For example, paddy field provided habitat area for many animals or brought birds as a feeding space. Similar forms are also found around the world. Therefore, a term, socio-ecological production landscape and seascape, was produced as a scientific point of view. Next, please. So, SEPLS is defined as dynamic mosaics of managed socio-ecological systems, producing a band of ecosystem services for human well-being. And therefore, it is a place where humans and landscape interact while maintaining or enhancing biodiversity, as well as providing humans with goods and services. Next, please. So this is a conceptual framework of Satoyama and Satoumi. So the ecosystem services produced in Satoyama Satoumi also are related to indirect drivers and direct drivers, and then coming to Satoyama Satoumi. So next, please. And this session is also focused on food systems related to SEPLS. Food systems refer to processes that include production, processing, distribution, consumption, and disposal. As we live in the world that face rapid population growth, excessive amount of food production and leftover, or excessive use of chemical fertilizer or pesticides, high carbon footprint, deforestation for agricultural land expansion, or pollution, etc., food systems have been unsustainable. So today we'd like to discuss how SEPLS can contribute to achieving sustainable food systems, not focusing only on production part, but also the whole system. So next, please. And we also discuss how SEPLS can promote transformation of food systems towards a sustainable one. Next, please. So to deepen our scientific understanding about the food system transformation, we will invite Dr. Silvana Furi from Uruguay as a keynote speech. Then we will have 2 case study presentations from the more practitioner side. One is from Taiwan and another is from Mexico. After these 3 presentations, we will have a panel discussion, inviting more speakers. So now I'd like to invite Dr. Silvana. She is a research associate at South American Institute for Resilience and Sustainability Studies, SARAS, and also a postdoctoral fellow at Stockholm Resilience Center in Sweden. Okay, so Silvana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Koji, and thank you for the invitation and for the organizers as well to host this session. As it was introduced already, I will be sharing some insights on the latest research on food system transformations and what that means, to maybe offer some clarity and some points of discussion or lenses of analysis to look at the different cases. Well, what we know today is that the goals for food system transformations are very popular worldwide. They particularly abound in the literature, not only research, but also different reports, publications, websites from different types of organizations, advocacy groups, and so on. But because of this popularity, it is not always clear what the term really refers to. This confusion about the terms is also exacerbated because food systems are conceptualized or understood and even represented, as we see here, in very different ways. But speaking of systems typically means considering not only the whole spectrum of activities that are involved, for example, production, processing, transportation, consumption, and so on, but also many drivers of change like demographics, policies, technology, etc. And with all of this, the multiplicity of actors that are involved in delivering multiple outcomes. And these outcomes can be food security, livelihoods, equity, or ecosystem stability. These ways of understanding and representing or visualizing food systems, as we can see here, especially in this particular example, have offer us a way to understand the complexity that emerges from all of these interactions, and also pushes us to put less stress on different elements of the food system, but see it as a whole, especially looking at the interactions between the parts. But a food system angle doesn't only mean looking at the interactions between the elements, but also considering scales, that is, connections across time, but also across space. For example, we can think of very local actions or actors, and also very global ones, very global dynamics. All of this increases the uncertainty, and also even adds surprises to this mix. And all of this tends to prevent us from being able to fully control change in a system. So that's something that we need to reckon with. So in this landscape, I'm going to be presenting some insights that we draw from a study that we did, a semi-systematic literature review that looked at the research literature only in this case over the past 3 decades. We know that this literature has been produced from very different perspectives and disciplinary backgrounds. So we try to really understand how people understand food systems and transformations, how this discourse, these concepts and explanations have really evolved over time, the main topics of interest, and basically how change is understood and can be promoted. And to do this, we looked at 3 databases in 2 languages, English and Spanish, and particularly publications since 1994. The study is shown here that you can look into more details if you wish later on. So one important thing that I like to stress is that we chose 1994 as a departure because there was a seminal paper published by Kenneth Thalberg speaking of transitions towards regenerative food systems. Here he argued that the actions needed to promote this included a decolonization and the structure and restructure of industrial agriculture to support the preservation of indigenous and traditional food systems, and also a major value shift that involves adopting systems approaches and highlighting health rather than productivity as an evaluation criteria. And while these ideas may resonate with us today, it was very progressive 3 decades ago. We also wanted to understand how much this discourse has actually changed or not in these last 3 decades. So when we looked at this literature, we found that really the evolution started very slow, especially looking at food systems as a unit of analysis, really looking at the system. And then this literature really just exploded or had a spike mostly in the last 9 years. When we look at where this literature emerged from, where it has been published or who produced it, especially who were the leading authors, we also identified that most of the leading authors were based in Global North institution, which also showed that there was very low representation of authors from low and middle income countries. We also gathered some insights on how the interest in different topics or perspectives evolved throughout these 3 decades. And this graphic tries to map all these themes across the 3 decades, but I'm going to just highlight a few things. First, there wasn't much discussion or not really major contributions in the first decade after Thalberg's paper. But the research started growing more rapidly towards really the last decade. Some of the themes that have become really popular is a focus on agroecology and also the integration of certain theories, especially transition theories, to food systems. And I will mention this later on to explain a bit more. But more recently, in the last decade, we've noticed a sort of shift from some of these topics. Agroecology has been really constant, but other topics have emerged, like a focus on the Sustainable Development Goals when that came out, and also later on the importance of food citizenship, paying attention to different participatory platforms, the role of governance more recently, and an interest in justice in these processes. I will come back to some of these points later. The other main insight from all of this is that when we try to understand what researchers mean when they talk about transformation, while there are some nuances in some of the studies, the key takeaway is that different terms are adopted, but most of them really just mean or refer to a significant shift. And we can see this in terms used like radical, deep, or fundamental change. In this sense, researchers are quite clear that this is what they refer to, basically moving away from the current industrialized food system and trying to think of alternatives to the status quo. In this sense, an important takeaway is that change is not really seen as just a matter of adaptations or small fixes, but like I said, significant change to a different type of system. Again, some other elements that are highlighted when we see how researchers understand food system transformation is that these changes will span over time. So it's typically not something that's going to be quick. And also that it requires being intentional about it. And this means that while we cannot control complex systems, we can direct or steer change in different directions that we will need to agree upon which those are. Another important takeaway from all this study is that there are basically two types of theories that are used to explain change in food systems: transitions theories, and there's a graphic of a framework on the left, and transformation theory on the right. There are many similarities and also nuances and differences in these theories. I'm not going to go deeper into this, but I want to highlight something that is key to understand how change is described. First, both communities that produce these theories talk about different scales in terms of micro, which is where the niches of innovation and experimentation are located. We also refer to them as seeds. Also, the second level, or the meso, the middle, is where the regime or the mainstream current model is situated. We often refer to this as the status quo. And this spans the current or more prominent technologies, policies, institutions, knowledge, or habits. Essentially, the space or the level where the transition or the change needs to happen is at this regime. It's basically a change in all of these elements that basically make up a new system. Because of these levels, oftentimes change is described in terms of movement across scale. So that's why we talk about scaling up, for example. And this is when innovations that are at first marginal or are at the bottom or the niches can scale up to the regime. I'm not going to explain too much about this, but this is essential to understand how in the literature we start seeing change described as often being either top-down or bottom-up, which typically connects to these processes. Really, in the literature, there's a diversity of strategies that are described. Some argue that change needs to be directed from the bottom up, from the niches that need to grow and become mainstream. This is usually the case for the work that proposes agroecology, for example, or also any other examples with place-based or territorial approaches. These type of studies tend to stress land stewardship or participatory models of governance. Other researchers argue that transformative change is most effective when it's driven top-down, as in the case of planning or policy changes, usually at the national or global scales. And these processes are typically, but not only, driven by experts or planners. Some tend to be a little bit more participatory. But there's also many other studies that take a more nuanced or what we call hybrid approaches, and this is becoming more common recently, by suggesting that both strategies are needed, and we need to transcend this dichotomy of either bottom-up or top-down. And some of this also highlights that for change to happen, there needs to be an alignment, especially in the values that we see in the regime. And so at this stage, it is a matter of some space in the middle between regime actors and niche actors, and an alignment happen at this space. Another important point is that interactions happen not only across time, but also across space or geography. So paying attention to different elements, to how these are coupled or in some way connected in spite of distance, it's important to better grasp the implications of change or the trade-offs that need to be considered. So I'm going to highlight a few takeaways that might be useful for us. Basically, a systemic approach means considering multiple drivers of change and the activities involved in the system. So this means that change does not rely only on a few actors, for example, consumers or farmers. These are only part of the puzzle of the larger system. Then strategies cannot be universal or driven by these single actors or sectors, and there's no singular or universal solution. Context is key. Another important point is that since multiple actors and institutions must be involved in the changes, there's an increasing attention in how food systems are governed, and the literature is really advancing in this space. And because of this, change or transformation is understood as political, because the strategies and the goal will always be contested. And also one of the main barriers of change in the present, it really relates more to power and politics than a lack of knowledge or a lack of ideas for solutions. So because this means there will be winners and losers, there's a need to strengthen stakeholder participation and include both powerful actors, but also those that are typically excluded, like indigenous peoples or rural communities. The other main takeaway is that these processes, because of all the risks associated, need to be equitable and respectful. So there's an increasing attention to justice. And another important point is that this also reflects in how the research is conducted. So that's why it is important to have more representation of scholars from the low and middle income countries, because problems and solutions are a matter of perspective. So in all of this, I'm not going to stop on this, but just to point out that we did suggest a definition for food system transformation, which we found was not very clear or really existent as such in the literature. And something that I want to highlight is that we see transformative food systems processes really require a collective and inclusive redesigning of the components of the food system, where debate, governance, and reimagination needs to happen. But this is also important to happen at multiple scales. So all of this needs to be collectively stewarded based on the needs and features of each context, while being aware of the global dynamics, uncertainty, and surprises. This means that we need to be proactive and take an anticipatory approach. So trying to make them future-proof as much as possible. So I just want to highlight a few points that might be helpful for our discussion. I don't want to repeat some of the elements that I said, but actually highlight some elements that were not so prominent in the takeaways from the paper. One of the key elements that is not very developed in this literature is the stress on biocultural diversity. So there is definitely a potential to expand on the cases and how this could be an approach to transform food systems. Another question that is open there, very much connected to this, is how to balance tradition and innovation, because it can be many tensions, but also opportunities if it's done in just ways. And finally, I also want to stress the role of blue foods and essentially seascapes that is, until very recently, was quite absent from the food system transformation literature. And there's a space there that could be expanded. And the other last point is that a debate about the decolonization of food systems has not been taken up prominently since 3 decades ago. It is there, but it's still not quite popularized. So there's an opportunity to expand this area as well. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvana, for providing us with the interesting speech and important points for food system transformation based on your recent study. So now let's move on to the case studies. The first presentation title is Indigenous Stewardship and Resource Co-Management, Co-Creating Sustainable Food Systems in Socio-Ecological Landscape, Taiwan. The presenters are Dr. Hua Qinling, Director General from Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency, or FENCA in short, and also Tribal Elder Chi Yo-Ken, Chair of the Board, and as well as Maioli County Saishat Indigenous People's Forestry and Worker Limited Liability Cooperative. To show various library images, they prepared a video for us. So let's watch their video, please.
国际里山倡议网络的伙伴，大家好，我是台湾的林业及自然保育署署长林华庆。今天很高兴跟大家分享，我们跟台湾的原住民族赛夏族借由森林共管所建立的绿色森林产业，不但提振了部落的经济，也有效让森林的生态变得更好。台湾是一个面积只有36000平方公里的小岛，它的气候位于亚热带跟热带地区的交接，在这个岛上有超过268座3000公尺以上的高山，同时有超过6万种以上的这个物种，而且呢，还有16个在这边已经居住了千百年的原住民族，是一个面积虽小，但是却有着非常高生物多样性跟文化多样性的岛屿。在岛上的原住民族，在过去长期以来都利用森林里头的自然资源来支撑他们的生活跟文化。那在日本100多年前，日本殖民时期首度将台湾的森林国有化，使得原住民族的生活空间受到了一部分的限制，加上在后来我们的政府也承袭了森林国有化的制度，使得森林里头所有的自然资源都归属于国家，也因此原住民族对于森林里头的自然资源的利用受到了更多法令的限制，这使得原本原住民跟台湾森林之间的亲密关系，因为所谓的一些自然资源法保育的法令而产生了非常大的隔阂。我们林业及自然保育署由于是国有森林的主管机关，也是台湾自然保育的中央主管机关，因此在过去非常长的时间，跟原住民之间为了自然资源的利用，有着非常多的误会与冲突。我在2016年上任之后，希望化解这样的冲突，而且希望透过推动共管制度，让原住民族重新跟山林之间能够缝合起原本应该有的亲密关系。那在2018年的时候，我们有一个机缘，就是跟位在北台湾的赛夏族缔结伙伴关系。伙伴关系的缔结意味着双方必须放下过去的仇恨跟歧见。部落的长老根之优他提起，希望这样的缔结不只是一个形式，而是双方能够有真正的实质合作。由于在南庄的赛夏部落周边，把原本的森林维持得非常好，于是我提议我们可以先从部落来发展林下的养蜂，来生产森林蜜开始。由于南庄地区有非常多珍贵的树木，因此在过去一直是让非常头痛的盗伐热区。所以当我们缔结了伙伴关系之后，我们先开始就委托部落族人针对这个地方的国有森林进行巡护。这项任务虽然利益良好，但是也引发有部分的检察官的疑虑，因为在过去有一些盗伐案件，就是有当地的部落族人涉入，他们担心这样的任务反而让族人有更多的机会可以去进行盗伐。但是我们基于伙伴关系的建立，前提必须是信任，所以我们还是并没有停止这项任务，而族人们也没有让大家失望，他们在这个区域的巡护做得非常好。那除了盗伐的案件有效的降低之外，还有非常多森林火灾的防护，甚至是一些登山的意外事件的救援，他们都发挥了非常重要的第一线的角色。在2019年的时候，根之友长老提议，希望让族人们可以重新再深入到 当地的这个国有森林里头，在过去部落作为成年礼场域，于是在我们的同意之下，族人们在相隔了非常长的时间之后，重新再去造访这片过去他们熟悉的森林。当他们发现到过去的森林还包含古道，还有包含生态，都维护得非常好的时候，族人们相拥袭击而起。在这个森林里头的珍贵生态资源，包括被族人们称为爸爸的树的这棵大树，还有像蟒蛇一样粗的菊花藤。于是族人们决定希望将这一处的国有森林也能够发展作为生态旅游的场域。除了运用在国有森林里头过去作为成年礼的场域来发展生态旅游之外，我们也陪伴塞夏族的族人们开始来发展林下经济，包含了森林养蜂，还有椴木香菇的培育。同时族人们也运用森林里头的倒木，还有一些蕨类或草本植物来开发非常具有创意的个性化的小盆栽，会受到许多消费者的欢迎。那在之后呢，我们也进一步的培力族人，开始去进行人工林的抚育跟发财。这些多元的产业，它虽然有不同的经营的形态，但是它核心的理念都是在运用森林里头的自然资源，来创造出永续的经济收益。而这些绿色森林产业的商品，就在这栋白色小屋来进行贩售跟推广。这个白色小屋是由我们所提供的一处闲置的办公空间，让族人们来进行这些贩售的工作。而这个办公室呢，在过去其实是管制族人进出国有森林的里头的一个非常重要的建筑。所以在过去族人们非常痛恨这个地方，他们甚至把这个地方叫做魔鬼的家。但是如今族人们却重新来利用它作为绿色森林商品的展售，甚至变成是族人们现在在假日休闲一个聚会的场所。这一点让族人们非常的感慨，也非常的庆幸能够跟我们有这样的合作。绿色森林产业的推动，让部落族人的经济明显的有效改善跟提升。有一些在过去曾经因为贫穷而涉入盗伐的族人，如今也成为捍卫森林最佳的前锋战士。这项以发展绿色森林产业的共管计划，让部落族人从森林的自然资源里头得到了支撑生计的贵利，族人们也回馈给森林更好的守护跟捍卫。政府也因为森林得到族人的守护，得以把资源投注在其他更需要的地方，因此达成了政府、部落还有森林的三赢。今天很高兴有机会可以跟大家分享这样的一个案例。
冇有该热爱，一个撒邦塞些带那他们撒万个萨们。这里就是我从小生长的地方，而且也是我接受民族教育成年礼考试的场域。爷爷告诉我说，森林里所有看到的一切都是有生命的，因此我们要学习如何与大自然共生共存，要尊重大自然。所以我们从小就坚守山林。山林是塞夏族教育场域，也是民族药草植物场域。每一种植物应用在生活中不同的用途，例如芒草植物是巫师的法器，用在驱邪、祝福、祭典，到现在都还在使用。西子蕨、墨点樱桃树是药用植物，作为麻醉药和下毒使用。冷青草、水麻、黑心紫金牛、悬钩子、野牡丹、构树等等的植物，不仅可以吃，也是药用植物。塞夏族与自然和谐共生，发展出社会规范与生活禁忌等等多元的文化。 例如警惕族人在晚上不能狩猎的猴欢喜树，也称之为太阳树和爸爸的树。珊瑚礁是传统婚嫁必须准备的植物，使用珊瑚礁花来代表女孩的纯洁、善良与贤惠，并称之为定情花，也称之为情人花。而且珊瑚礁也是非常好用的食用植物。葛藤花，塞夏族称之妈妈的花，每年葛藤开花的季节就是塞夏族母亲节的到来，并以葛藤花来象征母亲的伟大及对妇女的尊重。葛藤也是塞夏族非常好用的药食两用植物。牛樟树，塞夏族称之为生命树，在古代大洪水的时候，巫师牺牲了生命而化身牛樟树，是塞夏族重要的民族植物，而且也是塞夏族非常重要的药用植物。2018年，塞夏族和林业及自然保育署签订伙伴关系后，山林共管之后，让我们塞夏族人可以看到了未来。为了要让塞夏族人能够真正享受山林的惠益，塞夏族和林业及自然保育署率先共同复育塞夏族重要的民族植物南庄橙。南庄橙，塞夏族称之为嘎达柚，是传统药食多用植物，甚为珍贵。1926年，日本柑橘学者田中长三郎博士与日本农业实验所研究员岛田弥士先生共同鉴定后发表，南庄橙为台湾特有种植物。台湾南庄乡蓬莱塞夏部落是标本原生地。1960年后，因栖地大量开发而濒临消失。目前，南庄橙被国际自然保育联盟 IUCN 列入红色名录，属于极危植物。2022年2月，塞夏族和林业及自然保育署共同在蓬莱村塞夏部落进行复育。目前，南庄橙植物共种植了有2500多棵。2019年成立了合作社，以塞夏族的传统结合现代，以公开公平的方式，让所有的族人们能够享受真正的山林共管下的惠益。成立合作社，我们依法健全组织，让部落族人每个月都能够稳定有收入。因此，就在这样的一个进行之下，部落族人逐渐脱离贫穷，生活也稳定了。每个月10号就是我们开月会的时间，这个时候是族人最开心的时候，也是大家可以领钱的时候。
部落这几年最大的改变，就如这张图上所叙述的文字，但是当中让我最印象深刻的就是过去我们还没有山林共管之前，族人几乎天天都来借钱，尤其是我们的杂货店前面，每天都是聚集着许多的族人在这里喝酒，而且就在杂货店的墙壁上就会写着某某某欠多少钱，某某某欠多少钱。但是到了今天的2024年，族人们呢再也不借钱了，而且杂货店前面也没有人喝酒了，大家都在山林工作。还有更开心的是，墙壁上也没有任何人会登记欠了多少钱，因为族人们在现在每个月10号都能够领得到他应有的收获，所以现在生活稳定了，自然呢就脱离了贫穷。
当我们的生活稳定之后，我们也附赠停止52年之久重要的塞夏族成年礼祭仪文化。除了我们附赠了文化，我们也持续在附赠自己传统的食用与药用的民族植物。
气候变迁是今天人人共同面对的问题和责任。塞夏族坚持守护山林和大自然共生，能够为这个地球来尽一份责任。最期盼的就是让我们的孩子都能够回来，世世代代的快快乐乐的就在部落生活。非常的感谢大会，让我有这个机会来和大家一起分享我的部落。天祝福大家，欢迎你们有机会来我的塞夏部落玩。马阿洛伊啦！
Thank you very much, Dr. Lin and Elder Ken, for sharing your case. It was showing that both national top-down approach, also the bottom-up approach, and the successful case. So now we'd like to move to the next case from Mexico. The presentation title is From Sea to Table in Mexico, Fomenting the SEPLS as a part of sustainable food system. Let me invite Marin Johnson, director from Fundación Semillas de Vida. So Marin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Koji, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I will share my screen. So here you go. So yes, I think it was a very good framework that Silvana made for us, because here we're going to hear about a case, a special case, a very different one from the last one we heard, and from a different perspective. But I think it can show us something of the local context within the global context. Our organization, Fundación Semillas de Vida, work from the seed to the table. And this is also why it's so excellent within this context of the CPS, because we see it from the local problems, but also including the national ones. So the context here in Mexico, we are a center of origin and domestication and diversification of more than 100 edible species. And yes, of course, one of the main one is the maize, is the corn, and it's cultivated a lot. Traditionally, it's cultivated within the the milpa system. The three sisters, it's called in English, but it's actually more than three, because these three is the maize, it's the beans, and the zucchini. But we can find in the south of Mexico, in the Mayan milpa, we can find up to 70 different plants in the same plot. So within this system, we have this domestication and diversification process. So for example, about 10,000 years ago, they took the small salvage corn that's this size is the size of the wheat grass, and then the generation after generation, after selecting the seeds, the biggest, the ones that was most adapted, you can see here in the photo, we come up with this huge cob that we here love and eat so much in Mexico. And I think it's very interesting that Silvana mentioned the bioculture diversity, because I think it's a very good concept to just get together this nature aspect and also the culture, the social aspect of the importance of this kind of production, because it's not just the agriculture production, it's a whole system. That's why it goes so good with Satoyama, because it's a harmonic ecosystem that with the maize you have the access of the system, but with the legumes, with the beans or other types of different types of beans, they fix the nitrogen. So we have the fertilizer, the natural fertilizer, and we have the zucchini with the big leaves that are protecting the roots, and others that we have the chile that are also repellent from insects, and we also have all the green leaves that comes out. We have about 300 different green leaves that you can consume that comes up naturally in the milpa system. And so, and all the food culture here in Mexico is of course the traditional food culture is based on this system. So you can have this taco, a taco, a soft tortilla filled with beans, and you have a sauce made of chile, and you put some green leaves on that, and you have a perfect nutritional meal. So we have about this food culture. It's you can see it so much in the study, because we have 700 different dishes prepared from maize. So this is just a sign of how vast this culture is. this is on one hand, but I think it's also important to because we're talking about food system transformation, and it's transformation from what? It's interesting that that Silvana was talking about this article from 1994, because here in Mexico, it's also a very important year, because it was when we entered to the free trade agreement, NAFTA, with United States and Canada. So we're living in the context, in a national context, where we're actually importing also 40% of the corn that we consume in Mexico. And this corn is GMO corn. And this corn is produced with huge monocultures, with a lot of chemicals. And it's also because of the GMO corn that's produced, the most of it's dependent on glyphosate, that we know that's killing off all the biodiversity, and it's also bad for health, for consumption. So this corn that we import, it's a different kind of corn. It's a corn that goes to feed. It's a corn that goes to the industrialized products, sorry, the industrialized products, and all the industrialized, because we are also here like one of the most, the biggest consumers of sodas in the world. So it's like these two models are going, are existing parallelly, but one is, you call it mainstream current model, and then we could also call it a dominant model, but the other one is sort of resisting this model. So the work of Semillas de Vida is started in 2007 in this context, where we're starting to give permits for genetically modified corn to sow here in Mexico. So, but we work from the seeds from the local communities, and also up to the national level. In this way, we have local seed conservation projects, that seed exchange fairs and funds, participatory improvement or breeding, and agroecological production that we also heard about before. Here you call it agroecological transition when you speak about it in political policy, but we also in the local context, it's an agroecological production that have this systematic view of the production and this knowledge exchange that it's so important. So here I'm just going to mention these 4 cases that we work with very different contexts. And in the whole of Mexico, as you can see here on the map, we have these land races of maize. And this maize, the corn is so, it's actually in global level, it's the most produced grain today, because it's used for on the one hand to do industrialized products and the feed and everything like that, and also it's used as combustibles. Like 30 to 40% of all corn that's sowed, cultivated in the United States, it's going to combustibles. So it has so many uses, because, and also like thousands of other uses, not just these lovely dishes that you can eat in part of the food culture, but you also can sow it on different levels, like the sea level, from the sea level up to like 3,000. I think actually in South America, you can have it on up until 4,000 meters above sea level. So I have this in very, very, very different contexts around the world. So let's see. So here we have in Tlacotepec Plumas in Oaxaca. It's quite dry climate, and it will have very little rain, about 400-600 millimeters a year. And so it's a very prolonged drought period. So here we have had, on the one hand, the seed exchange fairs. We had actually the first this year, but also captation of water, because it's so complicated the context of the cultivation. We can see this maize here that's huge. It's very, very, very big. It's a maize that you sow in February when it's a drought. And it's born from the humid in the earth that was from the last season. And then, as you can see also in the picture, it's like a valley. So the valley, when the rain starts, it's flooding. So the maize, it's standing in the rain. So it's a maize that's very resistant resilient against the drought, but also it can almost be it's resilient against a lot of rain. So it's a very particular context of cultivation. And here are two projects that were actually supported by the IPSI initiative. And here we have, for example, in Cuyuca, the Benitez and Guerrero, you have the sowing. You can see it's this from sea level up until 1,000 meters, and it's more warm, subhumid climate, and they have this but a very huge range of different land-raised mazes. And we also have in Jalisco, it's more temperate, humid, subtropical climate, about 15 to 35 degrees, 1,700 meters above sea level. It's a little bit more dry climate. So you can see with different kinds of climates, and you can still have this production that this milpa production that goes so well, because the milpa production you can also include and should include like the trees around it with fruits, and you can make it a more holistic approach. And then we have in Veracruz, which is more into the south, well, a little bit closer to the south. And we also have this very big variation. So you can see here how it's grown in the mountains, in the side of the mountains, because when you come a little bit further down, because it's like 13 to 1,500 meters over sea level. But if you come a little bit further down, you can see that there's more of these hybrid or improved maize that are sowed also in monocultures. But the most resilient kind of cultivation is the maize that are sown in the milpa, because these are resilient against the humid, it's resilient against the difference in the sea level. And then we go closer, because we have on one part we have these projects that's concentrated on seed conservation and also reproduction of food culture. But then we go closer to the consumers in this project, for example, that we are supporting the connection between the countryside and the consumption, because I think this is one of the main problems in the mainstream current industrialized production system, that you have this interruption between the consumers and the actual producers. So it doesn't have this connection. So this is a project where we work actually together with the government, the public university, to support the tortillas made from land-raised maize, instead of these tortillas that are made from wheat, that are made from corn that is genetically modified, imported from these food systems. So we have these two systems here colliding. So you can see these farmers in the picture, they actually are growing here very close in Mexico City. So we still have this cultural biodiversity so close to the city, but the students, on the other hand, they don't even, some of my students have been teaching in the university, they don't even know that we are sowing blue maize or different colors of maize. So it's very important, this connection between the consumption and the production. And on the other hand, then we go what we do in the organization. This is one huge part of our work. It's the knowledge dissemination and like publications, conferences, workshops. We also had different publications where we emphasize the conservation of seeds and how they're conserving seeds and also the exchange of seeds. But on the other hand, we also have the political advocacy, and we are a part of a class action against the GMO corn. As I said in the beginning, actually in 2009 was the first permits to sowing genetically modified corn, but we have succeeded. Well, in a way, it's still in the process, but we succeeded to make a class action, and it's in the system, in the law system still, but it's from 2013. It's prohibited to grow GMO corn here. And also now we are in this moment, we're in a panel of controversy with the United States, because we had a presidential decree in 2020. and then it was renewed in 2023, that's saying that we don't want to eat genetically modified corn in Mexico. And the United States are saying, but you have this free trade agreement with us. How can you say you can't say that you want to control what you're eating, because you need to, all corn is the same. And we say all corn is not the same. We have the maize and we have the corn, and it's very different. And also, I think in the end, I would like to also emphasize that all of this work that we're doing is not possible without our alliances. We have one alliance, is one, the La Campaña Sin Maíz No Hay País. It's called the campaign No Corn, No Country. And it's all of like 300 organizations in the country that's in this struggle against the GMO corns, and also in supporting the alternatives. But also with all the other universities are essential for our work as well, institutions, national and international, as in this case that we see here. And I just wanted to conclude. Here we can see some farmers from Veracruz that are the keepers, the keepers of the bioculture diversity. And they are, as one of my conclusions is that the seed biodiversity in farms' hands is indispensable for food culture, because it's through the selection of seeds and through saving the seeds and keeping the evolution, the development of seeds in the different contexts and in the different geological and climate contexts that we can secure that we will have seeds in the future. We'll keep on supporting this amazing vast food culture. And also it's like a genetic bank that is alive, and it's the greatest genetic bank that is alive in the context of maize in the whole world. So it's very, very important, the work that they are doing. But I also want to emphasize that it's a systematic approach in a local level, and that's why I think CPLS are so fundamental for this sustainable food system. And I think it can be clear how you can connect actually what we are eating, what we are producing, with a sustainable food system and the transformation of the system. It's called here like the agroecological transition. And we also have, with the last years of the government, there have been some programs and there have been some progress in this sense, but we still see the problems. I think it's very important challenge is to reinforce the relation between the CPLS and the national food consumption. I think it's actually can be it's part of the solution. It's part of this transformation towards a sustainable food system. And then I just want to thank you very much. And here, if you have any more questions and comments, I will be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much, Malin, for sharing the case from Mexico. That was very interesting, and then can provoke more discussions. So we'd like to move to the panel discussion. Let me share the screen. So before going to panel discussion, I couldn't show you this page due to technical issue at the beginning. So this is kind of image of Satoyama, where people do human activities such as agriculture, forestry, or and so on. And then these activities also provide enhanced biodiversity. So it means that this is the kind of production area that the case from Taiwan and Mexico show that they achieved kind of sustainable production. So, but we also need to look at the whole food systems, not only production side, but also where people consume, like people live in cities. So now we like to have more discussion with speakers. So I prepared a few questions in advance. So first, I'd like to invite more speakers. First of all, Laura Pereira, you're here. So she is a professor at the Global Change Institute, University of Witwatersrand in South America, and also research at the Stockholm Residence Center in Sweden. And also we have Dr. Wat Chin Lin, and then Chi Yo Ken from Taiwan. And then also we have also welcome Dr. Paulina Karim. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency, FENCA. And she was also assistant professor at National Dongfa University, Taiwan. And Silvana. So everyone, please open your camera. Okay, great. So first, I have questions to Laura and then Silvana. So after hearing the two cases, what do you think of the potential for SEPLS to contribute to food system transformations? So who would like to go first? Laura?
Yes, I'm happy to go first. Thanks, Koji, and good evening to most of you. I think it's afternoon for me here in France at the moment. And yeah, wonderful presentations. Just checking you can hear me, Koji. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Great. Yeah. So I mean, I think what we've seen through these presentations is the critical point of taking a systems approach, a food systems approach. So we're not just focusing on production, on consumption, but when we're thinking through transformation, we have to think through the systemic aspects. That I think the other really interesting aspect is so this recognition of the need to combine landscapes and seascapes, which I think is also a critical innovation that's been made in this concept, because we get our food from multiple different ecosystems, natural biodiversity ecosystems. But we tend to still silo those. So even though we take a systems approach, we still sort of focus on sort of large-scale agricultural production, for example, or looking much more specifically at horticulture or livestock or fisheries in these very kind of disparate ways. And yet they are all fundamentally connected. And if we're going to be able to have more sustainable diets, meet nutritional as well as cultural components, and I think that's the other dimension that really came through quite strongly in these presentations, in this concept, is to recognize that culture is a fundamentally important aspect of the work that we do, and that links into the justice aspect, into the equity aspect, into the diverse knowledge systems that are associated with these different land and seascapes, which again is an important component of this transformative capacity. Sort of taking these as all fundamentally interconnected, I think is really the stance that research, but also policy, needs to be taking when we think through transformations in the food system. And recognizing, that you're not just a fisher or a sort of a farmer of a particular of rice, for example, but that actually you're a steward of the landscape, that you're also going to be sourcing your own food from multiple different places, that just because you fish doesn't mean to say that fish is the only protein that you're going to be accessing. And to recognize that we need to be taking all of these fundamental connections into account. So for me, that's the really beneficial aspect of the discussions that we've started to see, really centering this idea of a systems approach, sort of embedding food within these broader landscapes and seascapes together, and that the focus on culture, on specific place, and the knowledge systems associated with that is really a critical aspect of food systems that we need to be accounting for when we're thinking through transformation, if it's going to be more equitable and just. So those are my main comments from that perspective. Thanks, Koji.
Thank you very much, Lola. So Silvana, please.
Thanks, Koji. And I will add a few points beyond what Laura was saying, which is an important aspect of this, what we saw in both cases, is the role of culture and how it actually evolves over time. So these aspects related to adaptation or kind of going back to restoring certain practices or certain species, bringing them back, but also kind of innovating around them is a central aspect of how this transformation will take shape. So I mentioned before the potential tension between sort of tradition and innovation, but I think it was more of a provocation, more to actually think about how this is constantly happening and how to make this tension go in a direction that we need to go, especially considering the different communities that are impacted. So really what I wanted to highlight is I think both case studies are really great examples of work that is being done that is already impacting the food system in very positive ways. Both are very rich in how they show how it can impact livelihoods, how different partnerships can be created, how the impact can be at the local level, but also be also noticeable at a regional or national level. And then in a way really shows how it can embrace, how these processes can embrace the voices of some of the groups that are typically excluded, how we saw the tribe in Taiwan being first moving from attention to actually achieving a partnership that really works for everyone. I think these are already really great examples, and maybe it's not a matter, from my perspective, it's not so much a matter of what we need to do to make this impact the food systems. It's more about taking this system's lens to see how this is impacting or where there could be other risks or opportunities, and not so much that it's not already happening. When we take a systems perspective, then we can see other elements that we might have neglected. And so in that sense, I come back to this point that I made and that Laura was stressing, that it's not just about production and consumption, and it's not just about joining the two. While it needs to happen, it's also considering many other dynamics that are around all of this as well. But like I said, I think I was really happy to hear from the different examples of how this is achieved in different ways, and also consider that sometimes there are tensions that we need to work with these tensions, like the approach of resisting the mainstream system, as what Malin was saying, which is very, very prominent, this discourse in Latin America. And it sometimes it's important to keep that discourse, especially to be able to kind of bring to the fore some of the voices, perspectives, and knowledge that is typically not included and that deserve more space. So, I mean, maybe my takeaway is that I think it's already happening. It's more about making the connection to look at the system and not like as a linear connecting production and consumption, because everything is involved from the cases that we saw today.
Okay, thank you very much, Silvana. Okay, thank you, Lola and Silvana. So now we can also hear more from the cases in Taiwan and Mexico. They may want to talk more about what they have done and then what kind of challenges they have been facing. So I have these questions to Malin and also the team Taiwan. So how effective do you think the SEPLS approach is to promote food system transformation or sustainable food systems, not only the production, but also the whole system? And also, what are the existing challenges in your case, and or any special efforts or successful cases that you are already making? So, for example, Taiwan, now we also have a Dr. Lin, and she may also discuss how Taiwan is making an approach from national scale, and also Elder Ken may have some opinions from the grassroots level. So First, let me invite the Taiwan team. Who wants to start?
Okay. Koji-san, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for your invitation. Yes, the SEPLS approach can play an important role in achieving place-sensitive food system transformation and fostering sustainability in SEPLS, especially the first one, sustainable use of local resources by indigenous people and local communities. The second is weaving of their traditional ecological knowledge with modern science. And the third is new form of co-management and key in the process. Today, we share the story of forest co-management between the Saisha people and our agency. It is highly relevant to the theme of our discussion today. Let me use Nanjing orange as a more example. The Saisha tribe has a very well preserved traditional ecological knowledge about the use of various edible and medicinal plants and herbs, including Nanjing orange. On our side, the Finca, we help to provide expert advice on conservation of the critical and endangered species. We also invited specialists who help to analyze its nutritional properties. Then we jointly development creative ways of utilizing Nanjing orange in various products, such as highly quality essential oils and award-winning jams, unique branding, development of market channels, and attention to consumer demands have all played an important role in this process. Another in 2015, we established Taiwan partnership for the Satoyama Initiative. We call it TIPSY. It is a nationwide partnership network that promotes sharing the replication of successful on the ground experiences in Taiwan SEPLS. Our agency, with its 8 regional branches, provides institutional support to TIPSY. Over the years, experiences of the Saisha tribe have encouraged many other SEPLS to develop innovative and sustainable approach to production and natural conservation. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lin. So, Elder Ken, would you like to add something? You are muted.
OK，谢谢。我觉得林署长讲的就很好了，我只补充一点就好了。现在的社会对原住民的传统的知识跟智慧，认识太少了。希望呢多一点 有像我们这样的合作，那然后呢，跟政府做三联共管，那如何把原住民传统的这些三联智慧应用在不仅在食物上，而且还可以呢让它走进市场，也可以呢让我们的粮食有更多元。大概我补充的就是这样，谢谢。
Thank you so much, Elder Ken. Koji, please allow me to translate for Elder Ken. So many thanks for your presentation. Many thanks for your invitation. And I mostly agree with what Dr. Lin has mentioned. I only have one point I would like to supplement, is that our current society knows so little about traditional ecological knowledge of indigenous people and local communities. So hopefully in the future, more and more people can learn about it and can actually apply it in their daily lives. And that also co-management partnerships, like the one that we have between our tribe and Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency, can be promoted worldwide. So we also hope that traditional ecological knowledge can be used not only in food system transformation, but also in solving other environmental crises. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elder Ken and Paulina. So, Elder Ken, you have something to say more? That's all.
跟长老有没有补充的地方？
还有什么要问我？
看跟长老有没有要补充的地方？
我补充其实我想现在大家就在谈到粮食的问题，其实我个人认为，大家对原住民关于大自然共生的这样的一个概念真的是太陌生了。我很有福气在林业署林署长这样的一个协助下，不仅让我们晒下自己的传统智慧，现在开始我们布阵了，而且更重要的是，我们自己的生态环境也因这样子呢而更好了。然后现在呢，我们也创造了很多把我们自己原有的传统智慧这些的食物啊，不管是我们的传统文化现在大众呢也都开始认识了。我补充的一点就是，不要忽略了原住民族跟大自然共生共存的千年来的重要的传统智慧。我觉得这个是绝对在21世纪今天气候变迁，大家呢一定要共同呢来重视的一个问题，那就是要认识原住民。
The point I would like to add is about indigenous people and their ability to live in harmony with nature. Unfortunately, very few people nowadays know about this unique ability of us as indigenous people. Well, I'm very lucky to be an indigenous person, and I'm also very lucky to be working in partnership with our government, with the Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency. So over the years, we've been able not only to revitalize our culture and knowledge, but also to improve our local environment and to preserve our traditional ecological knowledge on native plants and herbs. So in the future, I would like more people to become acquainted with our culture and to not forget how important it is to live in harmony with nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elder Ken. And Paulina, you also want to add from your own?
If I may, Koji, I mean, it's been such a delicious discussion, a very interesting one from different perspectives. As Dr. Silvana has mentioned in the very beginning, I'm actually here to learn and to listen from everyone. But what I found particularly interesting is how often the question of scales has been mentioned. You know, we've talked about spatial scales, temporal scales, and I think especially when we talk about SEPLS, it's important to remember what kind of scale we are dealing with, right? We are talking about landscapes and seascapes, which are fairly small, but have a very big potential. So I think it's important to kind of not overestimate our ability, you know, to transform a food system, but also to remember that we are the beacons of sustainability. We are the beacons of transformation. So maybe mainstreaming our approaches, our landscape and seascape approaches and SEPLS could be a very good way to go. And this can be done in various ways. We've talked about partnership and consumer approaches. We've talked about going against, but I also think it's important to think about going for. For instance, how can we use our partnership with businesses, such as ESG models? Or how can we promote sustainable food systems through education and bring in our SEPLS leaders, such as Elder Ken, for example, as our teachers to our educational institutions? I think it's very important to be seeing these opportunities also from a very positive side, and then kind of trying to mainstream them to the public who doesn't know about it yet, as Elder Ken has mentioned. I have a lot more to say, Koji, but I'll stop here, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paulina, for bringing up all the important points. And so as we are running out of time, so let's now ask Malin, what's your perspective to the question?
Well, yeah, we're running out of time, so I will be very brief. Just adding what Paulina said. I think it's just one of the greatest challenges, just as everybody else has also Silvana mentioned, like this innovation and tradition. How are we going to, instead of that innovation is going against tradition, that's not how it's supposed to be, and how are we going to solve the problems? How it can work together? And I feel like the biodiversity, the culture, the nature is sort of things that's gluing together all of these aspects of the consumption and production and innovation. And then we have this, well, the tradition, the aspects of biodiversity, and we can, if we include all of these aspects and not that one is dominating the others. I just want to mention briefly one of the challenges that we are facing with the participatory improvement or breeding process. I think it's a good sign. It's like historically we have these breeding processes that have been conducted in universities or institutions very far off the land, in the traditions, in the communities, in the culture, and not in the culture context. So we have this selection massal that we're called, and it's called that because you are doing it together with the communities and selecting, but mixing it with innovation and technology, because we have ways of knowing which plants we should use, which plant we should choose, so we can improve the qualities of the seeds, but in a cultured context. So it's also like we are choosing the seeds according to what we want to do with the seeds. So it's like if we can mix all this together, we can go forward again for this transformation of the system, of the food system. And I think there is where CPLS is very, very important, because you have you're including these different aspects at a local level, and then connected it with a structural level in the transformation of the food system. I think it's a very, very good, it's a good complementation. I think that's how we're gonna find more solutions. Thank you. Now I'm gonna leave it with that.
Thank you very much, Malin. So yes, today we learned a lot through how we can promote the food system transformations, and how SEPLS can enhance such transformations, and especially the great cases from Taiwan, Mexico, and they showed how involvement of different actors are important, and then we can scale up and based on these successful cases. And then, well, we have a lot to discuss still, and then I think we can keep discussing further, and then hope to discuss with our more future great results with the public. So now we like to invite Mr. Wataru Suzuki. He's for the closing remark. He's the director of the Biodiversity Strategy Office at the Ministry of Environment, Japan. Wataru-san, please.
Thank you very much, Koji-san, for your kind introduction, and also for your excellent moderation, and also for IGES team, ISAP secretariat, and translators, and everyone involved for your hard work. My name is Wataru Suzuki from Ministry of the Environment of Japan. I'd like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Professor Takeuchi and all the distinguished speakers for sharing concrete cases and also for your lively discussion. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation for all the people participating to this event during your busy schedule. By learning the very informative presentations, I have reaffirmed my belief that the promotion of the socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, SEPLS in short, is a key to achieving not only sustainable food production, but also transformation to a sustainable food system as a whole. In a complex food system consisting of diverse stakeholders, there are still large challenges on how to incorporate the concept of SEPLS or landscape approach from upstream to downstream, and how to foster understanding among consumers. The Satoyama Initiative has focused on SEPLS and has accumulated many good cases and knowledge on sustainable food production and value chain development and so forth. To continue and expand such efforts, I would like to invite everyone to join the force. The International Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, or IPSI in short, is a platform to facilitate collaborations and the information sharing among members to realize sustainable future. I hope that more and more organizations will be interested in the partnership. IPSI is open to all relevant organizations and strongly encourage those who didn't have a chance to join the network. Please feel free to reach out to us or the IPSI Secretariat, which is hosted by United Nations University Institute of Advanced Study on Sustainability, or UNU-IAS. The information is also posted in the chat box. Thank you again for your participation and contribution.
Thank you very much, Wataru-san. And thank you very much for your attendance, despite the late time in Japan, but also other audience from around the world. So now we'd like to close our webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.